Happy Lent,
Happy Lent.
Ash Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
So we're busy tonight.
Yep. Yeah. So potluck dinner at 6:30 tonight. So please, if you're coming, please bring a dish to share. We'll gather together for some nourishment and then sort of move into our worship service with the imposition of ashes about 7:15, 7:20 ish.
I'm bringing green bean casserole.
We're doing some kind of potato thing. So.
All right. So we've got the starches, we've got the vegetables. Somebody's got to bring some protein. So.
Yep.
So, all right. So, John, you had the very great challenge of preaching on Transfiguration Sunday.
Fun Sunday.
Sometimes I think I've run out of Transfiguration sermons. So we do it every
Yeah.
year. So so we're going to be doing Luke 9, 28 to 43a. Great little learning piece about things like 43a. It's
Yeah.
only the first sentence.
Yep.
It's only
Yep.
usually the first sentence or sort of first part.
Yep.
When it
Yep.
kind of switches to a new idea
Yep.
that continues on, that's
Yep.
when you stop. So you ever see that? Sometimes you see 43b.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a long sentence or something. So now about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, as they often are. But since they had stayed awake, I'm sorry, that caught me funny. But since they were awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came over and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one of any of the things that they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then, a man from the crowd shouted, Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He's my only child. That's probably significant. Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It throws him into convulsions until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. Okay, so we'll see what we can do with this.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, and there's so much. It's one of those, isn't it? It's like fire hosing you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like so fire hosing you that it's like, okay, where do I start? One of the things I like about Luke's account versus all the others is that Luke's story starts on the mountain, but takes the disciples right back down to the people.
Yeah.
And so there really is a sense in the movement of the way this is told, because the other accounts don't follow like this. That these mountaintop moments where Peter and James and John are up there and they're like, let's make dwellings. In other words, let's stay here.
Yeah.
This is good. It's good for us to be here. But Jesus leads them back down the mountain, back down to where the need is, back down to where the people are. And the contrast is interesting. The disciples think they know what to do on the mountaintop. You know, let's stay here. Moses, Elijah, and Jesus are all here. Let's stay here. Down off the mountain, casting out demons, they're unable to. And I'm humbled by that because I don't think I can cast out demons either.
Never tried. Don't really want to.
Maybe that's the faithless and perverse nature of my faith. I don't know. or lack thereof. Um, but I think that's what I'm always drawn to is that movement back down the mountain to where the people are, to where the need is, and that fits Luke's kind of movement of Jesus being among the people, not always being set up off from them.
Yeah, and I think you kind of get that echoed a little bit in the conversation that Jesus is having with Moses and Elijah. They're talking about what Jesus is going to accomplish in Jerusalem, which he has to go down the mountain. I mean, they've missed the point of the conversation, which I think kind of goes back to the scene where the cloud comes over and they're terrified by the cloud and God goes listen to him. Like
Stop talking so
miss,
much.
Yeah, you're missing the point of yes, you get to see who he is. You get this rare account of Jesus being in the company of the two biggest prophets of Judaism, but what he's called to do requires him to go down the mountain. Listen to the fact that you have to go down the mountain.
So then here's the question, John. It really is a question. So here we go.
Yeah.
We're back to this again.
Yeah.
Do you think that what the transfiguration really is about, at least for Luke, the disciples are up there, at least the three are up there, and the glory of God lights Jesus up. A word speaks about him being beloved. Listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jesus moves down off the mountain, and he's there casting out demons, healing, teaching, walking among the people, being present with them. And we get this last line, and all were astounded at the greatness of God.
Mm-hmm.
So the people down the mountain see the greatness of God in what Jesus is doing to heal and be present. Mm-hmm. The disciples see the greatness of God in that shining vision and the voice.
Yeah.
And so here's what I'm wondering. In the way in which we deal with a theology that John and I learned when we were in seminary about the hiddenness of God.
Yeah.
We see the hiddenness of the glory of God in the cross,
yeah.
where the world looks at it and says, this is all death and dying. Mm-hmm. We look at it and we see the hiddenness of God. Yeah. We see salvation out of that. I wonder if the transfiguration is not kind of the same thing. Mm. It's a coin there. It's a coin with two sides. It's a coin that is the glory of God. And on the one side of it is the suffering that we point to and look at and say, this is terrible. Where is God? And there is healing and there is presence and there is love and grace within that. And that's one side of the coin. And then on the other side of the coin is the glory of God that's shining. It takes almost kingdom eyes, doesn't it, John, to be off the mountain and to see the same kind of radiance and greatness of God that you see when you are on the mountain and everything's going well. You're far away from the crowds and the problems and the strife of the world, and it's just shiny, happy people.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
I think you're right on the money there. I think that's the real challenge is to see God's glory in the midst of the challenge of life, which that's the part that's promised, I think, in terms of God says, I'm with you in the darkest valleys, and we have walked that this year with COVID, and we're walking it with Ukraine. We're walking it in a multitude of different ways, and I've lost track of how many people have said, what's God doing in all of this? Yeah. And we're so good at seeing God when we're on the mountaintop, when things are going our way, when things are happy and great, which that's not really, doesn't happen that often. That's not the markers of our line of faith. It's the where's God in the midst of the oh my goodness moments. Mm-hmm. The moments that take our breath away, the moments that that really challenge us, I think you've got it spot on. Of we all too easily see God up on the mountaintop moments and complain that we don't have enough of those moments in our life. But God's right here in the middle of the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the day-to-day stuff.
Well, and I feel convicted by that in some ways because I think that's what you and I were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
When we were dealing with a situation.
Yeah.
And I was just complaining to you that I was really just very angry with God.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like, in this situation, it's just not, I am praying my heart out and just I'm not seeing glory. And I think that's where the challenge comes in, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's our humanness, I think, is that we expect God to show up in logical places, and God doesn't. And that's that hard part of the theology of glory and the theology of the cross that we talk about. Of God shows up in the last place we expect in the ways that we don't expect. And here it's we want God up on the mountaintop. God comes down. We want to walk up the mountaintop because it feels good to walk up the mountaintop with our own works, our own what have you, and stay there and dwell there. But God goes, no, 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 no. I'm going to come down here because I get to be with you forever. There's nothing that separates me from you.
Yeah.
Which I think you're spot on in that, of that tension between the two. It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. You want to pray us out?
Sure. Gracious God, we look for you in every single day of our life. We look for you in the words that we hear, the actions that we do, the encounters that we have. Lord, oftentimes our eyes are drawn to the wrong place because we miscalculate sometimes who you are. That you sit enthroned and we come before you, but you are present in everything that we do. Because you sent your Son into this world to be with us, to be part of us, to go to the cross and free us from all those things that get in our way of seeing you, touching you, experiencing you, of living into your grace, your mercy, and your love. Lord, this day, strip away all those things that get in our way so we can find you. We can find you beside us, before us, and behind us, walking with us through whatever this day has in store for us, Lord. Lord, help us to just dwell richly in your presence. In the name of your Son we pray. Amen.
See you tonight.
Take care.